Hi folks. So next one we got up here today is a Marantz model 2120 AM FM stereo tuner. I picked this up, advertiser's not working. It's a little different than the last tuner that we had up here, which was powered up but didn't have any AM, FM, no static, no nothing. This does give static on FM and to a lesser degree on AM, but we have no reception whatsoever. So I haven't had the cover off yet. I'm a little concerned. I'm hoping that the tuning capacitor is okay. It sounds like the front end's working. I believe the IF is working, although I haven't injected any signals or indeed, like I said, had the cover off yet. So let's pop this thing off and see what we got. Okay, so I've got the cover off and the tuning capacitor seems to be okay, because I can move that, and if I move the tuner here, you can see that it's moving. However, we've got a couple wires flapping in the breeze here, and I'm not sure what's missing. Something is missing here. We got 4 cut wires. One of them goes directly to the tuning cap. So I'm not sure what we got going on here. I'm gonna have to consult the manual, and we'll pick this up after that. Okay, I'm a little embarrassed I didn't realize what it was, but I've never seen one of these before. So the problem is that somebody took the AM loop stick antenna off the back. They harvested it for something else, because apparently there's a problem in this tuner. And it also explains why that we got static on FM, but we got very little on AM, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you hear that, that's FM. It has an antenna, but I'm receiving nothing. Okay, anywhere. And if I go to AM, we get much less signal because we have no antenna. The loop stick's been removed. However, just so happens that I have one that we can put in there, so we'll stick that in at the appropriate time. Meantime, in order to localize where the problem is on FM, I have taken a ×1 oscilloscope probe and I have gone to the base of a FET that feeds into the IF stage. Let me turn this down. I'll show you that on a schematic, but what we're going to do is we are going to feed a signal in from our generator at the IF frequency. So let's get this guy turned on. This is our 8657A. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Okay, it's booted up. Frequency 10.7 megahertz. FM 75 kilohertz deviation. And let's try 100 millivolts for amplitude. Okay. So our IF is good, and our problem is going to be before that in the RF section. So we're going to have to take a look in there and see where the problem is. Let's see. We have a good solid IF signal there, and that's the first stage going in. So I'm going to print up the schematics, and we're going to take a look around and see what our problem is. Okay, I'm not sure what happened here, but by probing around and injecting that signal, the tuner now seems to work.
The Better Business Bureau A rating. Call National at 800-42.
And I'm getting all kinds of stations.
Always free solution. Each child's unique need. The brain balance program to be an effective non-drug option.
And causes the earth and...
Hey, go ahead. You can get whatever works for you, but specifically...
Okay, I'm not sure what the problem was because I've tapped around the same areas and I can't get the malfunction to reproduce.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Well, then Roxanne.
Yeah, Caleb.com. It works if you want to give there. You're busy this morning.
Okay.
Do I even have time? It takes you less than 2 minutes.
Yep.
Or here.
I'm going to power cycle this and see if that changes anything. I hate it when things like this happen because if it malfunctions once, it will most likely malfunction again.
Like this, just some extra fun.
I'm going to power cycle it a few times and then go go back to the drawing board. We're definitely going to have to go through an alignment, though.
In or out, once a month, the check is covered.
And we just
Okay, and then install an AM antenna.
Yes, not a lot of people that are in on that, so this is your opportunity, a great chance to win. Caleb.com, 800-525-5683.
Here we go. One song to make, 60 seconds to make this happen. Not even one song. 60 seconds to make it happen. Here we go.
Good now. No major tie-ups as you're heading out along. $50. Fast and easy. And get cash.
Just to get a taste. 88.7 The Gator Radio.
Okay, our stereo's coming in and out.
H production.
As a vendor, visit RivieraBCH.com/V.
So yeah, we're definitely going to have to go through an alignment, but I'm really curious what made this start working. I'm going to leave it off for a while. We're going to come back to it and see what we get. Okay, so I've come back to this and turned it on. Sure enough, we've lost our reception again. If I turn this on, you'll be able to hear. We have nothing. All right, so what I've done is I have pulled out a piece of test equipment, and we're going to take a look and see what's going on here. So, let me introduce you to my spectrum analyzer. This is the OWON XSA1015-TG. I picked this analyzer because Arrow was blowing them out for $600, which is an unbelievably good deal for a hardware-based spectrum analyzer. These things generally go in the thousands. I don't know why they were selling. I think they started selling them for $500. It was brand new in the box. The closest thing I could find online was $1,300. So yeah, I jumped on this. Even though I missed $500, $600 is still a screaming good deal. So, what we're going to look for, frequency 10.7 megahertz, which, if you recall, is our IF frequency for FM. So I need to go and give you a little FM 101 here for those who aren't familiar. So the function of the front end is to take the signal from the antenna and go through the RF amplifier. And then we have a local oscillator here, and our signal comes in from the antenna through the RF amp and goes into our mixer here. So we have our local oscillator going in, and we have our RF going in. Now the mixer is known as a nonlinear device, and it will spin off sums and differences of frequencies. And if you notice these dashed lines here, these all go to the air core tuner, and they change the frequency to all these stages at the same time. FM, and I believe super heterodyning, was invented by Edwin Armstrong, who was a brilliant man. We are still using these things today. I believe he invented super heterodyning in the 20s and FM in the 30s. Sadly, he took his own life because he was not adequately compensated for his inventions, or at least he believed he wasn't. In any event, we should see a different frequency at the input of our IF stage of 10.7 megahertz regardless of the setting of the tuner. So, if we look at our spectrum analyzer, we have no 10.7. Okay. I have set the span. Let's set the span for 500 kilohertz. And we have nothing. Now I am outputting an RF carrier of 90 megahertz into the tuner. So let's see if we can find our 90 megahertz. Okay, there you have it. Our 90 megahertz is coming in. But when I turn the tuner, you can see it gets higher and then lower as I get away from 90. Problem is, that's supposed to be 10.7. So we need to look inside the tuner module, which is not going to be any fun on this. They're usually sealed up, hard to get to. Fortunately, rarely give problems, but when they do, you've got to do some digging, and that's the case here. So I'm going to pause this, and we'll have to see what we need to do. It's possible also we have a thermal intermittent, which just makes life even worse. Anyhow, I'm going to pause it here, and we're going to see what we can see. Okay, so what I found is with a little creative beating, we get our intermediate frequency back. Now we are set to a center frequency of 10.7 megahertz. And if I bang on the tuner can, you know, your mechanic never makes that noise. Your car never makes that noise when you're at the mechanic's. Yeah, well, here we go. Because there we go. Let's see. You can see it popped up there. There is our IF, and as I tune it, you can see it goes right around 10.7. And if I turn up our FM,
what's the song for you that God is continuing?
now we don't hear anything because the tuner's in quieting. It's tuned to this. And if you were to look at the front, you would see that we have a signal here. And if I turn the FM modulation on, and I'll just show you that. If we go to our generator and go FM 75 kilohertz, there is our 1 kilohertz audio. Now if I turn our FM off, and I want to show you what that looks like on the spectrum analyzer. Since we have it hooked up here and since everything's working, when I turn FM on, you can see our modulation. And that's about 200 kilohertz. In fact, if I put the span at 250 kilohertz, you'll see it takes almost the whole screen. It goes off to the right there. Let me just tune it to center. There's your FM modulation. Modulation off, modulation on. So we have probably a bad solder joint. Again, it's going to be a bear to get to. So I'm going to pause this and we'll see what kind of disassembly it's going to take. Okay, so here's where we are. I took the bottom off hoping it would expose some of this front end assembly and we could hit some of the solder joints, but no luck. There is no way to get in from the bottom. So that means what we're going to have to do is we are going to have to take the pulley off the tuner, and I've already marked it, and we are going to have to unsolder all these points here and pull the front end out and see if we can find our bad solder joints. Generally speaking, when I do something like this, I just hit them all. But I am kind of curious if we can see where the problem is. So I'm going to heat up the soldering tools. I may show you how to desolder one or two of these, but it's fairly tedious and we don't need to make another needlessly long video. Okay, so I have pulled the tuner pulley off and I have it secured to the frame here with a set of hemostats. Because frankly, I would rather have my gums scraped without anesthetic than restring a tuner. Just me, but not my idea of fun. I have gone through and added some fresh solder to the terminals going to the board, and I'm going to remove all the solder from those. These are possibly going to suck up so much heat, I may have to pull out the soldering gun. Not something we normally use in a piece of audio equipment, but when you have something like this that's going to absorb so much heat, we don't have much of a choice. So I'm going to start by working these. And getting the solder away from these pins. This is a fairly simple process. I believe we're going to run into problems, however, when we get to these guys, simply again because of the amount of heat that they're going to absorb. You know, we might be able to get away with using just both these tools. Good to know. Okay, I'm going to pause this. No need for anyone to watch. Okay, I was able to get the tuner assembly out. I don't see anything wrong with any of the solder joints on here, so I'm going to have to reflow them all. I did have to resort to breaking out the soldering gun because, as you can see, these tabs go right to the body of this piece of metal, and it sucks up just a ton of heat. So I did have to resort to that, but there was no damage to the board. I applied the heat mostly to these tabs. So I'm going to reflow that, and then we're going to have to put this back together and see. Okay, I think I clipped off the last few words on that last take there, but anyhow, I've got the tuner reflowed all the solder joints on the front end assembly there, and I put it back in, and now we're going to flip the power on and see what we get.
It's work.
Okay.
Why do you think it's so much work?
683.
In just a moment. It's the news, junkie.
Style. Make sure you have it on wild.
Okay, well, we seem to be getting stations. We did before after I beat on it, so I'm going to solder in the rest of it. I just soldered in all the voltage and signal tabs. I didn't do the ground tabs until I was sure that we had a fix. I think we do. But I'm going to resolder everything else, and then I'm going to tap on it again, but I think we have a good repair. So I'm going to pause this, redo that soldering, and we'll beat on it together. Okay, say hello to my other little friend. Let's see if we can get this thing to malfunction.
It's a collective thing. So if you only pray for you, God won't help you to become a more selfish Christian. Finally, the spirit of prayer. He says, pray in the spirit. Now that sounds rather ethereal. How do you know you are praying?
I think we've got a good repair, so I'm going to stop this video now. We're going to pick it up with the alignment. But anyhow, I want to recap how we found what we found, because I think that's probably the most important part of these videos, and at least that's why I make them. So, we had static, but we were unable to tune in any stations whatsoever. So what I did, looking back at our schematic here, is I injected a signal right at the gate of this FET, which goes into this ceramic filter here. This is the first stage of the IF. And by putting a 10.7 megahertz signal in here, I was able to hear it. So we know we were good from there out, and that focused our problem somewhere in the front end, which is where I suspected it was anyway. So that's when we pulled the spectrum analyzer out, put it on the same point, and started tapping on it. Now originally we did see our 90 megahertz passing all the way through, but we never saw our 10.7 until we tapped on it just right. Then we saw our intermediate frequency, and when we saw that, we also had radio coming in. So the problem was somewhere in here. It was just a solder joint that went bad over time. Sometimes they're just tarnished leads, and after so many years they no longer make good contact. But reflowing all the solder joints in here solved the problem. It was a pain to get out, and fortunately the tuner string didn't come off, but I think we have a good repair now. So I'm going to stop this video now. As always, I hope you learned something. I enjoyed making this video, and I like giving back to the community that has given me so much. We'll talk soon. Take care.